Well, hello everyone. My name is Bhante Wade Buripano. I'm here at Empty Cloud Monastery in West Orange, New Jersey. Ordinarily at this time we'd have another venerable doing the live stream, but we received word just a little while ago that he's unable to do it this morning, so we received the request to produce it in-house here. And so we kind of scrambled to get this up and going. And for all of you who are used to the usual presenter, I have to apologize, and I'm sure he'll be back next week at this time slot. Excuse me. All right. I'm sorry, everyone. I had to stop the camera and mute the mic for just a moment because I suddenly had a cough. So the body is uncertain as all conditioned phenomena here in samsara, and so we have a change in presenter from the usual for Thursday mornings, and also I developed a cough at the beginning of the live stream, and this is the way life is here in samsara. So. But now it looks like things are underway, thanks to a number of people putting things in place also. While life is uncertain and all conditioned phenomena are inconstant and constantly changing and cease, also phenomena arise, and so we're able to put on this live stream, even though there's an unexpected change just before starting. So thank you all for your patience for the live stream to start. Looks like we have a number of people writing in, at least a few. Hello, Manal, and hello, Paula. Welcome to the live stream. All right, so why don't we start out with a short, just a few minutes of meditation, and then I'll go into a Dhamma talk. All right. And so to start out the meditation, what we'll do is we'll compose ourselves in our meditation posture. It's quite traditional to sit on the floor, of course, but you also could sit in a chair, or if you prefer, you could stand or even lie on the floor for this short guided meditation. I won't talk too much about posture, just for brevity's sake, so we could get into the guided meditation, but it's just to suffice to say that you want to sit in a or compose yourself in a relatively comfortable posture that also is conducive to being alert. And so then we'll do a short breath meditation, take a little pause in our lives here to tend to Buddhist practice, to prepare us for the day or to close out our day, depending on where you are. Here in New Jersey it's morning, so we're still getting into the swing of the day to some extent. All right, so if you are sitting or standing to start off this meditation, I would like to ask you to imagine that you have a cord attached to the top of your head, and it stretches up to the ceiling or up into the sky. Gently drawing you into an upright position. Just allow for a moment this imagining of this cord as though it's gently raising you up from above. And allow it to ease us into an upright and erect posture. If you're lying on the floor, you might just focus a little bit on relaxing the body and allowing it to straighten out and compose in kind of an even way. And if you haven't already, you can close your eyes, as long as it's comfortable. If you prefer to have your eyes open, for example, if you're already feeling maybe a little bit drowsy, Then you could leave your eyes open and let some light in and just gaze at a wall or the floor, or in an unfocused way, just as something that isn't distracting. And then we'll pay attention to our breathing. Notice it in the chest. Either the rise and descent of the air through the chest, or the rise and fall of the chest itself. Just draw our attention there. And allow the breath to be as it is, as we simply experience it in the present moment with our awareness, primarily our sense of feeling. We may notice that when we drew our attention to it, that the breath changed. Perhaps even also the heart rhythm changed as well. This is okay. We just let it do what it will. As we simply experience it in the present moment with mindfulness. All right. Now, I'd like to try a little breathing exercise, something I learned about recently from neuroscience, something a neuroscientist was teaching recently that I learned about, and it's called the physiological sigh. Some of you may be familiar with it already. A breathing exercise to help de-stress the body that we can use in any situation. We'll use that now to help the body grow calmer. You may or may not actually be experiencing stress right now, and so that's okay. We can use it anyway, and it's quite a simple and quick exercise. What we'll do first is simply, I'll explain it, and then we'll do it. So first we will take a deep breath through the nose, filling our lungs, and then we'll sneak in more air with a second in-breath till the lungs are very full. And then after a moment, we'll release all the air, exhale slowly. They say it's best to exhale through the mouth. All right. And so with some mindfulness, paying attention to the breath, we'll go ahead and start now by taking a deep in-breath through the nose. And then once the lungs are full, take in another in-breath to sneak some more air in there till the lungs are very full. And then after a moment, we release the air, exhaling slowly through the mouth until it's all out. All right. And then if you like, you can do a second one, taking a deep, deep breath through the nostrils, through the nose, and then sneaking in more air with a second breath. And then after a moment, releasing it, exhaling slowly through the mouth until it's all expended. All right. And then we remain mindful of the breathing, just paying attention to how the breath is now in the present moment. As it enters and leaves the body, as the air rises through the chest and descends. And you can notice the pauses in between as well. Or you may be noticing the rise and fall of the chest itself. And slowly allow your awareness to settle into this area. That is the chest. Allow it to settle down into that area. And sort of harmonize with the breathing. The breath may change over time. And that's all right. We allow the body to breathe comfortably and harmonize our awareness with it, meaning just let our awareness dwell there with the breath. If it helps, you might note the little label just throughout the in-breath, noticing in, and throughout the out-breath, noticing out. All right. In, out. Just to help the mind stay with it. And then you might notice if there's any suffering internally. Any stress or anxiety or sadness or pain, any anger. And just gently think of letting it go. Just let it ease on out. Noticing it for what it is, and just let it ease on out. Just let it go. And if you like, you can segue to a little contemplation of compassion for yourself, a wish of compassion. May I be free of suffering. Letting go of any suffering emotions in the heart. May I be free of suffering. Or if you prefer, may I be happy. May I be happy. May I be happy. All right. You can stay with this contemplation if you like, this wish for your own welfare. Certainly wonderful. Practice as you like, or you may return to the breath. Recentering again on the breath in the chest, allowing your awareness to kind of come down and dwell there. And you can stay with the meditation as you like, while I segue to a talk on Dhamma. It's been said that the best way to listen to the teachings of the Buddha is with a heart that's gathered together and clear. And so allow whatever words find their way to you to enter your heart. If you're in meditation and the words don't come through to you, then maybe you don't need them. Just stay with the meditation. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. Seekers of goodness and wisdom who have gathered today to hear teachings of the Holy Lord Buddha, we are here at the midpoint of the Buddhist religion, they say. The Buddha having given us this gift of his teachings freely, some 2,500 years ago. They having been handed down to us over 100 generations to the present day. Still in the world, thanks to the vast parami of the Holy Lord Buddha and the power of the Dhamma, and the parami and compassion of the disciples of the Buddha who have practiced well, and the fourfold Sangha of monastics and lay people who have supported the Buddhist religion and practiced the Buddhist religion all the way to the present day. It is something truly to be grateful for. These teachings of the Buddha, which appear in the world for a very short time, and then which are lost for an extremely long time until the rising of another Samma Sambuddha, a perfectly self-enlightened one. They say that for the Buddha to fulfill the spiritual virtues required to attain enlightenment, it took him innumerable lifetimes over incalculable aeons of time. They say in Thailand, where the staple food is rice, that if you were to consider all of the rice grains you eat in an entire lifetime, that number does not equal the number of lifetimes the Buddha had to strive in developing spiritual virtues in order to fulfill them, so that he could attain right self-awakening. And so there's a traditionally chanted verse within Theravadan countries that says, with ocean-like great compassion, our protector brought to perfection the spiritual virtues and attained perfect self-enlightenment for the benefit of all living beings. By the power of this truth, may you have victory. And so it's also said in Theravadan countries that the tradition that I'm familiar with, that Buddhism is our birthright. And why is it our birthright? It's our birthright because the Holy Lord Buddha gave it to us. And if we think of all the gifts that someone could give us, what could be a more wonderful gift than the Buddha's teachings? Teachings about suffering and the end of suffering, about pleasure and the increase of pleasure, teachings of wisdom and generosity, teachings of morality, and the ultimate teachings of immortality. A life beyond the round of rebirths, outside of the round of rebirths, where there is no suffering, there one experiences the supreme pleasure. And so when we gather together to hear words of wisdom from the Buddha's teachings, we can reflect with gratitude on how fortunate we are to have these wonderful teachings, and how truly magnificent they are compared to anything else we can receive. It is said within the Buddha's teachings that all beings are seeking pleasure and trying to avoid suffering. When I first encountered this teaching, I was a student in college, and I was taking a philosophy course that included some Buddhist teachings, as well as many other philosophers. In reading this teaching in a commentary to the Heart Sutra, it was at the very beginning of the commentary, and it struck me immediately that this was such a true statement. A beginning point that I felt was certainly true. And so therefore a good place to start. And so the question comes up sometimes about the various forms of suffering and pleasure, and recently someone was asking me about happiness. And they said, we hear different terms in the Buddha's teachings, or when Buddhism is taught to us, we hear terms like joy, and we hear gladness, we hear happiness, and we hear pleasure, and we hear elation. But sometimes it seems that also our teachers are telling us that we should always try to remain very even. We shouldn't become overly happy, for example, or of course overly sad or suffering. And how should we understand this? And so I'd like to talk a little bit about happiness, a little bit about how to cultivate it, how to live happily, and also practicing in different situations how to compose the mind. When I say practicing, of course the term has a wide range of application. For me, anyway, when I say practice, how we practice in various situations, I mean, if we consider the practice of the Buddha's teachings to extend throughout our lives, to permeate our lives, in our practice of generosity, for example, and keeping our precepts, worshipping the Triple Gem, or the constant development of skillful mental states and the relinquishment of unskillful mental states through being mindful or practicing loving kindness meditation, whether it's in formal meditation or in our daily activities. And so the term practice having a wide range of application. It's possible to find the different terms confusing. Oftentimes when we use these terms in Theravadan Buddhism, we're referring to words that we see in the original Pali language, which get translated in various ways by various translators. So it can happen that one word by one translator could be translated as joy by one translator, or by another translator could be translated as gladness, for example. Or, for example, thinking of the word pamoja from the Pali. Another word from the Pali, such as sukha, might be translated by one translator as happiness, or by another translator as pleasure. Or even the same translator might translate the word differently in different contexts, sometimes using happiness, sometimes using pleasure, sometimes using ease or comfort. And so we can be sensitive to this, that when we think about the Buddha's teachings in very specific words, that we may find ourselves in a little bit of confusion over what we're referring to from the original Pali. And also, perhaps the case that the Buddha used different words in different contexts and used the same word with different meanings. And this there are definite examples of in the suttas, it seems. And so we don't want to get too hung up on the specific words, in my opinion. And we test out the teachings that we receive from wise people to see how they work in our lives, and see, do they really reduce our defilements, as it says in the Kalama Sutta. If a teaching reduces our greed, if it reduces our aversion, or if it reduces our delusion, and it's praised by the wise, then that is a teaching that we should continue to follow. But if we find that a teaching does not reduce our greed, or it does not reduce our aversion, or it does not reduce our delusion, and it's not praised by the wise, then that's a teaching we should leave aside. And this takes time to navigate, to negotiate, and to learn about, of course. Now, the teaching on exactly which skillful mental states to cultivate at different times, it varies depending on your situation and the time and place. And so we have to develop our wisdom, our intelligence, our savvy about what to do in different situations. We have a word in Pali called panya. The word is panya. And it's been translated differently over time by different translators. writing about it in English, and some have translated it as understanding. Others have translated it as wisdom, and others as discernment. These are there are probably more examples. These are perhaps just a few. And some favor the translation discernment because it's closely related to the word to discern. To use your intelligence to distinguish, what's skillful and what isn't skillful. And so, for example, we have in a teaching from the suttas attributed to the Buddha, a teaching on generosity related to happiness and calm, and the skillful mental states with regard to the practice of generosity is one example of Buddhist practice. And it goes like this. It says, "Be joyful when preparing to give. And when giving, calm the mind on giving. And after having given, be elated." And so we have here 3 different mental states being recommended with relation to a single act of giving, depending on the point in time with relation to the gift, to the giving of the gift. So be joyful when preparing to give. And when giving, calm the mind on giving. And then afterward, be elated. This is an example of how we can use our discernment as advised by the Buddha with relation to our mental states in different situations. And you see the translator chose a very strong word for elated, a very strong word for how happy to be after having given. And we see this in the monasteries sometimes. It may be the monastery is very quiet. It can be very quiet in the morning. It may be that everyone in the monastery is meditating, this kind of thing. Maybe they've done the morning chanting, and they've been meditating, and then maybe they're doing some work even, but they're being quiet and mindful about it. You often see this here at Empty Cloud in the mornings. The mornings tend to be very quiet. But then it may be that some people will come in, even a large group of people, to make offerings for the meal. And to make merit and to support the religion, they bring in offerings of food, and they might be not as quiet as the monastics and the people staying in the monastery. And it's oftentimes the case that they're quite happy, and this is why their mood is very buoyant. And they may be talking, and voices may be elevated and very cheerful, and how they're expressing themselves with enthusiasm. As they're putting the food into dishes, or reheating food, or cooking some food, these kinds of things, and preparing it and laying it out in the serving area. And it's quite a wonderful thing to experience. If you ever have a chance to be in the monastery at this time of day and see the happiness that people are coming in to make offerings. Many of them have experienced the joys of generosity in the past, and so they have very strong positive associations with making acts of generosity like this. But it is possible that some of the people staying in the monastery may find this kind of jarring. They may not be as used to the monastery routine, and so very familiar, not as familiar with this, not knowing if this might happen. You might be caught by surprise, and everything is very quiet, and so on like this. And maybe they thought they were quite peaceful, and then there's this disturbance as they see it. And over time, practicing in situations like this, meditators come to learn that actually the mind wasn't so stable and peaceful beforehand. If it was, and if the mindfulness was good, if their practice of their meditation object was really good, then this wouldn't be so disturbing. They could kind of take it in stride, this change in sensory experience. That's all it is, really. It's just a change in sensory experience. And then the lay people who've come in to make offerings of food, they've assembled it all in the serving area, all laid out and nicely presented out of respect for the monastery and the practitioners. And giving with respect, it says in the Buddha's teachings, enhances the merit we make from an offering. Having a very skillful mindset like this. And they might be recollecting the triple gem and out of gratitude for the Buddha's teachings, making an offering. And typically the lay people here at Empty Cloud will kneel on the floor as the monastics assemble to receive the food offering. They'll kneel on the floor and then make a statement all together in unison. We offer this food to the Sangha. And then everyone together raises their hands in Anjali, that is, putting their hands together, their palms in front of their hearts, and rejoices by saying sadhu 3 times. And so a call goes out. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. And so they've gone from a state of being quite cheerful and happy and busy with preparing the food and then laying it all out. They become calm, kneeling there on the floor as they await the assembly of monastics to gather. And then together everyone is calm as the food is offered. And then afterward, the rejoicing in this goodness. And then as the monastics take their food, the lay people assemble in the Dhamma hall and sit. And they pay respects to the Buddha image first, and then they sit quietly and waiting. The monastics take their food. The monastics then sit in the Dhamma hall with them and offer the traditional Anumotana chant. Anumotana meaning a rejoicing chant. And so rejoicing, again, in the goodness of this generosity, and there sometimes will be a Dhamma reflection as well. And so it's a very happy occasion. And the lay people go out and they have while we typically try to keep the monastery very quiet, they have the opportunity then to engage in conversation, and the monastics eat in silence in the Dhamma hall, but we can usually hear the lay people talking and usually quite happy and convivial. It's an opportunity for socializing amongst the lay people who gather, and it's a very joyous occasion. And this is a kind of a time-honored tradition in the monasteries, and the time when the lay people have an opportunity coming in from the outside to add a spark of happiness to their lives through this act of generosity while making merit for their future welfare. As we know, generosity is necessary for us to have the material supports that we need in the future. And it's an integral part of the Buddha's path. And of course, the monastics are completely supported. Our lives are dependent on the gifts of others. And so we're supported by this. And even the monastics join in rejoicing through the exclamation of sadhus and the rejoicing chant. And so here's one example of how our moods might become quite elevated. We might become very, very happy. And it isn't bad. It isn't bad. It can be, in a case like this, it's actually quite skillful, according to the Buddha's teachings. It's something for the lay people coming in who make acts of generosity, is something that it can actually suffuse their entire day, this one act, this one short period of time in the monastery, or even multiple days, as they prepare in advance for it, and then having given the gift of food, throughout that day they may feel elevated and more buoyant, and then in future days as they reflect on it, many will even take pictures, of the event and the food that they prepared and send it out to their friends, and their friends have an opportunity to anumotana as well, and just rejoice in the goodness that they've done. So this is one example of how having a very high, happy mental state is very skillful, actually. Another example might be when we're practicing something like loving kindness meditation. There's a state of mind associated with loving kindness meditation, where if we're able to stay with the theme of loving kindness continuously over time, say an hour, or 2 hours, or 3 hours, perhaps a little bit more, if we're able to stay with it very continuously, wishing for wishing for our own welfare or for the welfare of others, and perhaps practicing the wish for the welfare of all beings in certain areas, such as all of the beings in our house, and all the beings in our neighborhood, all the beings in our town, expanding this wish for the welfare of these living beings, or for classes of beings at a time. For example, may all the human beings in the world be happy, and may all of the cats in the world be happy, and may all of the dogs in the world be happy. Thinking over time in this way, and then maybe transitioning to another style of practicing loving kindness meditation. Well, if you can practice loving kindness meditation continuously in this way, then you can access a state of mind called beautiful. The mind called beautiful, where the heart becomes very light and very buoyant and very clear and very happy, very happy. So you have a smile on your face, but it isn't dependent on anything, really, except that the practice you've done up to that point. It isn't dependent on anything you're looking at or anything you're hearing, not on any sensory contact. It's not because the weather is nice that day, or you have the kind of food that you want, or you just thought of a funny joke or something like this. But you have a smile on your face and the heart feels very light because of this practice you've been doing. And you're very, very happy. This is another example of a very high form of happiness that is also very skillful. Very skillful. And it can be a good part of our practice, to have this practice. Some people make loving kindness meditation their continuous kammatthana, that is their continuous home meditation object. Sometimes practicing other things, but their main object would be loving kindness. If not, then we might practice loving kindness sometimes, and maybe have another practice we practice more continuously. But to practice in this way at times, especially if we're feeling down, if we're feeling depressed, for example, or if we're feeling angry, or annoyed or frustrated, something like this, then practicing loving kindness meditation can raise the heart up out of this. And if we keep practicing it, we might even go in the other direction, up very high, to a very high level of happiness. And so this is another example of how we find in the Buddhist teachings that very high levels of happiness, being very, very happy, can be a skillful state of mind. A good thing to do, extolled in the suttas attributed to the Buddha himself. But then we find that then if we want to progress in our practice, at some point when it's skillful, then it's helpful to make the mind calmer again. Because even high states of happiness, over time and prolonged, one example is they can become a bit agitating. You know. They can become a bit burdening. They can become burdensome, I should say. They can become a bit tiresome. All these kinds of things. Also, we may need to sometimes need to focus our mind on something else. This is quite common, of course, while you're at work, or we're trying to take care of things at home, or trying to listen to a friend who needs a friendly ear, or anything like this while we're driving. Maybe the focus of being mindful in the present moment. And so in a case like that, the happiness might fade slowly, but with this focus, with the mind calm, we still feel quite good. We feel very good pleasure inside, without negative mental states arising. The heart is clear, and we still feel light inside and feel good. And if we're trying to go further in our meditation, we might at times then make the mind calm and then do something like a wisdom contemplation. Reflecting on impermanence, for example. Or reflecting on something like the 5 subjects for frequent recollection that we have. Or focusing on the not-self nature of phenomena. Or making our mind keenly calm and focused, we might simply be observant of the rise and change and cessation of conditioned phenomena. If we're so well concentrated that we can experience these things as they're happening in real time, and thereby develop what they call the vipassana jnana, or the insight knowledges, the learning stages that lead the heart into the path and fruit of sotapanna and the higher stages of attainment. And practicing in this way, and in some stages, of meditation, especially earlier when we're trying to keep the mind calm and focus in mindfulness, we might even ourselves find that we come in contact with people who are elated, or very joyful or cheerful, or situations where there's a lot of noise or commotion, or any of these kinds of things, and a lot of sensory contact. And if the heart isn't very well calmed and centered, and the mindfulness very keen, we might find ourselves upset by this, agitated, annoyed, disturbed, something like this. And we might even feel ourselves, it's better just to keep the mind calm, Shouldn't things always be quiet? Shouldn't things always be peaceful? We should always be equanimous, But in fact, it was our own joy and happiness that over time helped us to develop our minds to a point where we could also work on this clear, calm state of mind and being clearly mindful. And so we learn in this process that over time, through our own practice, or perhaps through the teachings of a kalyana mitta, a beautiful friend, a teacher, that we simply need to learn how to practice with this as well, with increased sensory contact and so on like this. And in fact, with our own changing moods that naturally will occur, even as we go through the insight knowledges, we'll experience a variety of emotions. And so sensory experience itself, whether it's any noise or distraction or sensation in the body, or it's the happiness of other people or our own changing moods, are not in and of themselves, from the point of view of samatha vipassana, calm insight, calm investigation, and calm and insight meditation. They're not bad in and of themselves, you might say. We might experience suffering, but the task is to understand suffering, as it says in the First Noble Truth, to know it with wisdom, so that the heart learns about it and learns to let go and not create suffering over these things, in relation to these things. All right. We started a little bit late today, and we're going already a little bit past 9. And so I should draw this live stream to a close. And I hope these words will be helpful to you. I offer them to you for your consideration and your testing in your own practice. And we can all take a moment to bring our hands together in front of our hearts and rejoice, perhaps quietly, in our shared practice of Dhamma by saying 3 times sadhu, 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 sadhu. And may you continue to prosper in the Dhamma. There'll be more live streams this evening and tomorrow. And of course the live teaching programs on Saturday evening here at Empty Cloud and Sunday afternoon. May you all be well. And goodbye until next time.